The first time Joseph met Emma, she was standing alone in a tattered pink dress, clutching a stuffed owl and watching other children laugh on the school playground. She was 5, tiny for her age, with wary eyes that didn't trust the world. Her mother, Julia, had just begun working as a nurse at the same hospital where Joseph, 30 at the time, was an emergency physician. Their connection had sparked quickly, both drawn together by quiet conversations over coffee breaks and the shared exhaustion of hospital shifts. Julia had told him early on that Emma's father had walked out when she was still in diapers. No goodbyes. No calls. Nothing. Just a sudden vanishing act that left Julia scrambling to raise a daughter alone. Joseph hadn't asked questions, he just listened. He remembered feeling this overwhelming sense of protectiveness, not just toward Julia, but toward Emma too, even before he really knew her. Over the years, that protectiveness deepened into something stronger: love. Quiet, steadfast love. The kind that builds slowly and burrows deep. By the time Emma was 7, Joseph had taught her how to swim and tie her shoelaces. When her school did a daddy-daughter dance in 3rd grade, Joseph showed up in a rented tux, awkwardly learning to waltz because Emma wanted it perfect. Every scraped knee, every stomach flu, every bedtime story, he was there. Not because he had to be, but because he wanted to be. He never insisted she call him Dad. That had to come from her. One night, when she was 9, she fell asleep on the couch after a movie. As he carried her to bed, she stirred and mumbled, "Night, Dad." He froze. It was the first time. He didn't say anything, just held her a little tighter before tucking her in. That moment stayed with him for years. Joseph and Julia eventually married in a quiet ceremony. Emma stood beside them, beaming in a lavender dress, holding a little bouquet of violets. She was 12 then. She gave a short speech at the reception and ended it with, "I know you're not my real dad. But I think love makes someone real. So you're my real dad to me." He nearly cried on the spot. By the time Emma turned 25, Joseph had been her father in every way that mattered for 2 decades. He paid for her violin lessons, which she quit, funded her university tuition, and even co-signed for her first apartment. He was the emergency contact on every form. The man she called when she got promoted. The one she leaned on when her college boyfriend dumped her. They were family. Or so he thought. Everything changed the day she got engaged. It was a warm autumn evening when she and her fiancé, Caleb, invited Joseph and Julia over for dinner. Emma was glowing, the diamond on her finger catching candlelight as she chatted about floral arrangements and venues. Joseph was happy for her. Genuinely. When she said she wanted a big engagement celebration, Joseph offered to help cover the cost. He even booked the band. The night of the engagement party, he wore his best suit and arrived early, ready to make sure everything ran smoothly. He didn't expect a red carpet, but he thought he'd be seated at the family table, maybe beside Julia or Emma. Instead, he found his name at a distant round table near the entrance, squeezed between Julia's cousin from Chicago and an old co-worker of Caleb's he'd never met. Confused but trying to stay positive, he approached Emma. She looked stunning in a deep burgundy gown, her hair curled delicately over one shoulder. "Hey," he said, "I think there was a mistake with the seating chart. Oh no," she interrupted, with a distracted smile. "You're fine where you are. Just enjoy the night." Joseph felt something crack inside him. Still, he didn't push. Maybe it was nerves. Maybe she was overwhelmed. He sat at his table, made small talk, and waited. Then came the speech. Emma took the microphone, beaming. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "It means the world to have so many people who've supported us. And tonight, I want to give a special thank you to someone truly important to me. The person who's always been my real father, Christopher." A man in his mid-50s, tall with a graying beard and smug smile, stood up from the main table. Joseph froze. Christopher. Emma's biological father. The man who had vanished before she turned 2. The one who never called. Never paid child support. Never once sent a birthday card. He walked up to Emma, arms wide, and she embraced him like he'd been her hero all along. The room erupted in applause. Joseph sat, numb, as the man who hadn't lifted a single finger for Emma basked in the glory of fatherhood. His heart broke right there, in a room full of smiling strangers. Later, he approached Emma. "Can we get a picture together?" he asked gently. She looked at him, no longer glowing, but distant, rehearsed. "Oh, sorry. I'm just doing pictures with my real family tonight." That was it. No hesitation. No acknowledgement of the man who had been her shadow through childhood, her anchor through young adulthood. Just a cutting dismissal. He stepped back, muttered something polite, and walked away. No one stopped him. No one even noticed when he left early. Back at home, he wandered through the rooms in silence. The family photos on the walls felt like cruel jokes. Julia was in bed scrolling through her phone when he asked, "Did you know?" She didn't look up. It was Emma's night. Let her have it. Joseph felt himself unraveling. "She humiliated me," he said. "She didn't mean to. She erased me. She's an adult, Joseph. She gets to decide." That's when he realized, he wasn't just being left out of the party. He was being written out of the story. And neither Julia nor Emma planned to change the ending. He stared at his wife, the woman he thought would stand by him, and realized the truth: he didn't belong in this family anymore. He had been their stability, their emotional safety net. But now that the storms had passed, they didn't need the umbrella. Joseph packed a bag that night and walked out the front door without looking back. For the first time in decades, he was alone, but free. Joseph found himself parked outside a 24-hour diner on the edge of the city, engine humming softly beneath the hum of the streetlights. The warmth from the party's wine had long since worn off, replaced by a numb chill that crept through his chest. He stared out the windshield at the flickering neon sign that read Maggie's Kitchen, but he wasn't hungry. He was grieving. Not the kind of grief that follows death, but the quieter, more hollow kind that settles in when something intangible dies, like trust, or identity. He had spent over 2 decades being a father, a husband, a constant. And now, in the space of one night, all of that had been rewritten. He checked into a modest motel on the east side of town. The bed was too firm. The lamps too dim. But the silence, it was perfect. He didn't turn on the TV. He didn't scroll through his phone. He just lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, his memories playing like a projector reel. Emma's 8th birthday where she cried because a friend cancelled, and he spent the day making paper crowns with her. The time she failed her first college exam and called him at midnight in tears. The day she told him she got the internship in New York and they celebrated with greasy takeout and laughter. All of it. Gone. Erased with one sentence. He finally slept, fitfully, and awoke to a pale morning and a single message from Emma. "Hope you got home safe. Sorry if last night upset you, but it was important for me to honor my real father. Hope you understand." Understand? He couldn't even begin to unpack that word. He wanted to reply, to pour out the storm inside him. To write something scathing, something real. But instead, he put his phone down. He wasn't going to beg. By noon, the messages started trickling in. Some from extended family, cousins, old friends, people who had been at the party. "You didn't deserve that, Joe. Honestly, I don't get it. That speech? Brutal. You were the one who raised her. It was her night, man. Maybe let her have her moment?" He deleted the messages without replying. How could he explain what it felt like to be erased in real time? That evening, Julia texted as if nothing had happened. "What do you want for dinner?" He stared at it for a while before replying simply. "I'm not hungry." She responded with a passive-aggressive shrug in text form. "You're seriously still sulking about this?" That was it. He drove back to the house, not to talk, but to act. When he walked through the door, Julia was at the sink rinsing dishes. The house smelled like roasted garlic and rosemary. It should have felt like home. It didn't. "I'm here to get my things," he said calmly. Julia turned, stunned. "You're still on this?" He walked down the hall, opened the bedroom closet, and pulled out a duffel bag. "It wasn't just last night," he said as he packed. "It was every night before it. Every time you looked away. Every time she looked right through me, and you let her." Julia followed him, arms crossed. "You're being ridiculous. You're really going to blow up our marriage because she wanted her dad there?" He zipped the bag slowly. She didn't want her dad. She wanted an illusion. A photo op. "And you," he looked at her then, really looked, "you let her burn me for it." Julia's mouth opened, but no words came. She didn't deny it. She didn't apologize. She just stood there, arms folded like armor. Joseph walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" she demanded. He paused at the threshold. "Away," he said. "For the first time in years. Away from people who only want me when I'm useful." The door shut behind him like a final period at the end of a long, painful sentence. He spent the next week in quiet. Rented an Airbnb above an antique bookstore, lived on instant ramen and gas station coffee, and let himself breathe. He ignored the texts that still came in like a metronome. From Julia. You're being dramatic. Grow up. Come home. From Emma. Hey. I heard you left. Are you okay? I didn't mean to upset you. I thought you'd understand. Please don't shut me out. But he did shut them out. And he felt stronger every time he hit delete. Then one afternoon, his phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. He almost let it ring. Then a voice, warm and unmistakable. Joseph? It was Lauren, Julia's sister. The only one in Julia's family who had ever really seen Joseph. Who never once pretended Mark's absence was forgivable or Emma's self-absorption cute. Lauren had always offered subtle support at the family barbecues and holidays, her looks saying more than words ever could. Hey, he said, surprised. I heard you left, she said. And I just wanted to say. You didn't deserve what happened. You were always more of a parent than he ever was. You deserved better. I thought someone should say that. He sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. It had been a long time since anyone said anything like that to him. Thank you, he said, and meant it. Lauren hesitated. Where are you staying? He considered lying. But something in her tone, earnest, gentle, made him speak the truth. That night, she showed up at his door with takeout and 2 cold beers. You look like you could use this, she said, handing over a bag that smelled like sesame chicken. He laughed softly, the first real laugh in days. You have no idea. They sat in silence for a while, sharing dinner on the couch. Then she asked, what now? I don't know, he said honestly. I spent 20 years being the guy who held everything together. Now I don't even know who I am without that. Lauren leaned back. You're a good man. That's still true. You just gave your love to the wrong people. He nodded, absorbing the words. The truth was, he had always seen Lauren as the quiet mirror of what Julia used to be, compassionate, steady, intelligent. But unlike her sister, Lauren hadn't changed. Or maybe she had. In all the right ways. You ever think, Joseph asked slowly, that we waste our best years on people who don't even notice? Lauren met his eyes and replied, all the time. But the good years don't go to waste. They shape you. And now, you finally get to decide what comes next. They clinked beer bottles, and for the first time in a long while, Joseph didn't feel like a ghost in someone else's life. The week after Lauren's visit passed in a strange haze of quiet joy and cautious optimism. Joseph, for the first time in decades, was beginning to feel like himself, not a role, not a placeholder, not someone's emotional utility. Just a man. A man who liked silence in the morning, the hum of a well-tuned engine, the dusty smell of old books, and the calming repetition of motorcycle repair videos on YouTube. He hadn't told anyone where he was, aside from Lauren. She respected his space. She didn't push. She just dropped by with food sometimes, or sat beside him on the balcony as the sun went down, saying nothing at all. It was the kind of presence he didn't know he'd craved for years, someone who saw him, and didn't need him to do anything. But peace, Joseph knew too well, rarely lasted when it came to unfinished stories. On a gray Wednesday afternoon, while sipping coffee at a corner cafe and flipping through apartment listings on his tablet, his phone buzzed. 12 missed calls. 3 voicemails. 9 text messages. All from Julia and Emma. Joseph's stomach turned. He let the phone ring again, ignored it. Then again. And again. By the 13th call, he sighed and finally answered. What? His voice was cold, even to his own ears. Joseph? Julia sounded frantic, disoriented, like a woman clutching at the edges of control. You need to talk to Emma. He closed his eyes. No, I really don't. She needs you, Julia whispered. He laughed, dry, bitter. She made it pretty clear who she needed, remember? Christopher, wasn't it? Please, she said, her voice cracking. Just listen, Caleb called off the wedding. Joseph blinked. What? He cheated, she said. Apparently for a while. Emma's devastated. She's not eating, she won't leave her apartment. She's called Christopher over a dozen times, and he's not answering. Of course he wasn't. The man had vanished once, and now he'd vanished again. Only this time, Emma had no backup plan, because she had burned the one person who had always shown up. She needs you, Joseph, Julia said again. You're still her dad. His blood boiled. Now he was dad again? He took a breath. Then another. The cafe felt suddenly too bright, too loud. He stood up, walked outside into the chilly air, and said calmly, "That's not my problem." There was a pause on the line, followed by a sharp intake of breath. "Joseph, don't do this," Julia snapped. "You're punishing her for one mistake. She's your daughter." "No," he replied. "She was never mine, not really. I was just someone to lean on until her fantasy father showed up. I was the rehearsal. The draft." "She's hurting," Julia said, voice rising. "She needs you." "She didn't care when I needed her," he said, and hung up. Then, with fingers that didn't tremble, he blocked Julia's number. And then Emma's. And, for good measure, Christopher's, though he doubted the man had ever saved his contact in the first place. Joseph walked 3 blocks to a small public garden, sat on a cold metal bench, and stared at a fountain bubbling in the middle of a pond. The water sparkled in the gray light. He exhaled. It was done. He had always imagined that if Emma ever came back, tail between her legs, he'd feel something: vindication, anger, maybe even hope. But all he felt now was freedom. That night, his phone lit up again. It was Lauren. Just one message. "Proud of you." He smiled. The next few days weren't silent. Emma tried to reach him from other numbers. Voicemails filled with shaky apologies and sobs. Emails with subject lines like "Please, Dad and I miss you." Each more desperate than the last. He didn't reply. Because the apology wasn't for him. It was for the absence of something: comfort, stability, a crutch. And Joseph had learned the hard way that being needed and being loved were not the same thing. Then came the real storm. Julia, furious now, began sending spiteful messages through unknown numbers. "You're abandoning her. She's young and confused. How dare you turn your back now? I hope she never forgives you." Joseph didn't flinch. This wasn't about forgiveness anymore. It was about truth. Emma had made a choice. Julia had stood by and justified it. And Joseph had spent too many years sacrificing himself on the altar of someone else's dysfunction. That altar was ashen now. A week later, just when he thought the drama had finally dried up, Lauren called. She was laughing. "Joseph," she said. "You're not going to believe this." He braced himself. "What now?" "It's Christopher," she said. He didn't just ignore Emma's calls, he blocked her. Full ghosted her. No texts, no return calls, not even an "I'm sorry." Joseph blinked. "You're kidding." "Nope," she said, still chuckling. He played Father of the Year for one night, soaked in all the praise, and vanished. He wasn't interested in her life. He just wanted the applause. He exhaled slowly. Of course he did. He'd always known Christopher was a mirage. But now, Emma knew it too. "She gave me up for that," he said. "And now she sees the truth," Lauren replied. "But you already walked away." "That's strength, Joseph." He thought about it. And for the first time, he didn't feel the pain of rejection, just relief. He'd spent years believing Emma might someday see who he truly was. And maybe she finally did. But now, it didn't matter anymore. Time passed. Joseph found a modest apartment on the south side of the city, quiet, warm, filled with things he liked. He started volunteering at a local youth center on weekends. Picked up motorcycle riding with a group of older guys who met every Saturday to cruise country roads and eat diner pancakes. He reconnected with friends, laughed more often, slept better. The grief was still there, yes, but it no longer ruled him. And Lauren? She became more than just a presence. One night, over drinks at a rooftop bar, she casually mentioned, "So, I filed for divorce." Joseph nearly choked on his beer. "You what?" She shrugged. "Yeah. Watching you walk away from people who didn't appreciate you made me realize. Why am I still married to someone who treats me like background noise?" He stared at her for a beat. Then, slowly, smiled. "So, you're single now?" She raised her glass. "Catching on, genius." They clinked glasses, and for the first time, the laughter between them didn't feel like a bomb, it felt like a beginning. It had been a month since Joseph's life turned upside down, and in that time, something inside him had shifted, subtly but irreversibly. His mornings started with the sound of birds outside his new apartment window. No more tense silences over coffee. No guilt-ridden glances at text messages. Just peace. He took long walks, sometimes with Lauren, sometimes alone. He learned the names of the local coffee shop baristas. He bought an old, beat-up motorcycle and spent hours restoring it. Every wrench turn, Every drop of grease on his knuckles felt like therapy. Purposeful. Grounded. It was the kind of life he hadn't known he wanted. The kind of life that didn't require him to be anyone's savior. And then came the headline. Lauren sent it to him on a Tuesday morning. The link came with no message, just the article itself. Local wedding venue sues bride for breach of contract after sudden cancellation. Joseph clicked it with a raised brow. The second paragraph named the couple, Emma Whitaker and Caleb Denning. He sat back in his chair. There it was, in black and white. Emma's dream wedding had officially imploded. She lost her deposit, her venue, and, according to the venue owner's quote, her reputation as a reliable client. Joseph almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But he didn't. She had scorched the bridge. The ruins of their relationship had smoldered in silence for too long to care now that her carefully curated fantasy had collapsed. Later that evening, he met up with Lauren at a cozy little bar tucked into a cobblestone alleyway downtown. It had a warm glow, live jazz, and the best garlic fries in town. Lauren slid into the booth with a sly smile. "You read it?" "I did," Joseph replied, sipping his beer. "Karma, it seems, is thorough." She chuckled, stirring her cocktail. "Think she'll try to sue you for emotional damages next?" Joseph smirked. "She'd have to remember I exist first." They shared a quiet laugh, the kind of shared amusement that didn't need to be loud to be intimate. Then Lauren leaned in, eyes soft but steady. "You know, I've been meaning to tell you something." Joseph tilted his head. "That sounds ominous." "I filed the divorce papers 2 weeks ago," she said. "It's official now." He blinked. "Wait. You actually did it?" She nodded. "I realized I'd been living like I was underwater. Always trying to smile for everyone else. My husband hadn't cared in years, and I was just going through the motions. And watching me blow up my life inspired you to do the same?" He teased. "No," she said, her voice more serious now. "Watching you survive it did." Joseph swallowed, surprised by the lump forming in his throat. "That means more than you know." She raised her glass. "To not drowning anymore." They clinked drinks. "To breathing again," he echoed. The days that followed blurred in a peaceful rhythm. Lauren became a fixture in his life, though neither of them used labels. They cooked dinner together. She teased him for his messy handwriting. He fixed her sink when it started to leak. One evening, while watching a documentary on motorcycle racing, Joseph's phone buzzed. A new email notification. Subject: "Please don't shut me out." From Emma Whitaker. He stared at it for a long time. He didn't open it. Just read the preview in the notification bar. "I know I hurt you. I didn't realize how bad until now. Caleb is gone, Christopher won't answer. I feel like I have no one. I was stupid. I miss you. I need." He didn't read the rest. He deleted it. Then another one came in. Then another. The tone of the messages morphed, from apologies to desperation. From desperation to guilt-tripping. By the end of the week, there were nearly 30 unread messages. He didn't open a single one. He was done letting broken people pull him back into their chaos. Then came Julia's last gasp at control. It started with voicemails from unknown numbers. Joseph let them ring out. He recognized Julia's voice instantly in each one, switching tactics with each message. Anger. "You're acting like a child, Joseph. She's your daughter." Manipulation. "I hope you're happy. She cries every day. But I guess that doesn't matter to you anymore." Guilt. "She made one mistake. One. You're just going to abandon her?" He didn't respond. And then came the final blow. "I hope she never forgives you." That one stayed with him, not because it hurt, but because it was so clearly not about Emma at all. It was about control. About rage. About losing the one person who had always kept things together. Joseph realized then that Julia was never sorry. Not about what happened. Not about Emma's betrayal. She was just angry that her crutch had finally stood up and walked away. He blocked every number. He felt light. It wasn't until the following Friday that the true irony hit. Lauren showed up at his apartment with 2 tickets in hand. "Road trip," she said with a grin. "To where?" "A biker festival 2 towns over." "You're not allowed to say no." Joseph chuckled. "Guess I'm driving." The drive was long, winding through tree-lined highways and open fields. The kind of ride that made your lungs feel cleaner and your thoughts clearer. They stopped at a diner midway, classic booths, stale coffee, and a jukebox that still worked. Joseph stepped into the bathroom and splashed cold water on his face. When he looked into the mirror, he didn't see the man who had sat quietly at that engagement party. He didn't see the ghost of a husband. He saw someone real again. He smiled at his reflection. He didn't need revenge. He didn't need an apology. He had something better. He had himself back. And maybe, just maybe, he had something new beginning with the woman who never asked him to be anything but honest. 2 months had passed since Joseph last heard from Julia or Emma. It was quiet, but not the uncomfortable silence that used to linger between arguments. This was a peaceful, grounding silence, the kind that happens after a storm, when everything has been blown away and only the essentials remain. He was living fully now, not just existing. His apartment had started to feel like home, with small personal touches slowly taking over, his favorite jazz records on a shelf, oil-smeared rags near the door from weekend motorcycle projects, and a pair of mugs that didn't match, but always held coffee for him and Lauren. Their relationship had grown without either of them needing to define it. They were two people who had lost time, illusions, and patience, but had gained clarity, and somehow, each other. On a rainy Saturday evening, Joseph was sitting on the couch, a wool blanket over his legs and a leather-bound book in his lap. Lauren, curled up on the other end, was flipping through a motorcycle parts catalog and circling pieces they didn't need but might want. Outside, the world was gray, but inside, there was light. "Did you ever think this would be your life?" she asked suddenly, her voice soft. He thought about that for a moment. "No," he said truthfully. "But I think it's the life I always needed. I just didn't know it." She smiled and didn't press further. Lauren never pushed. She waited for doors to open on their own. The final curtain on the past came not with a bang, but with a message. Not a voicemail. Not an email. But a letter. It arrived in his mailbox one afternoon, plain white envelope, no return address. The handwriting was instantly familiar, Emma's. Joseph sat on the edge of his bed, envelope resting in his palm like a weight. He considered throwing it out. Instead, he opened it. Inside was a single page, handwritten with shaky lines and the smell of lavender perfume, something she used to wear when she was 16. "Dad. I don't know if you'll ever read this. I'm writing it because I don't know what else to do. I've called, texted, emailed. I know you've seen them. I don't blame you for not answering. Not anymore. You were right. About everything. Christopher was never really here. He came, he smiled, he left. And when I needed him, he blocked me. Just like he did when I was 2. I thought I'd feel validated having him at my side, like something inside me would finally be whole. But it was like holding a balloon. You think it's going to take you somewhere, and then it just pops. The wedding's over. Caleb left. My life looks nothing like I thought it would. But more than all that, I've had to sit in the truth I refused to admit for years. You were my father. In every way that mattered. And I destroyed that. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say it. I hope wherever you are, you're happy. I hope you found something better than what we gave you. Because you deserved better. Always. Love. Emma. He read the letter twice. Then folded it carefully and set it on the coffee table. No tears came. No deep, aching pain. Just closure. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't reconciliation. It was a mirror. And for once, it wasn't cracked. Joseph stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, and looked out the window as the sky faded into dusk. Lauren walked in, saw the letter, and looked at him with a silent question. "I read it," he said. She nodded. "You okay?" He thought about it. "I think I'm better than okay," he said. Weeks passed. Joseph and Lauren took weekend trips together, small towns, coastal roads, motorcycle fairs. One Sunday, they found themselves sitting at the edge of a cliff in Northern California, watching waves slam into rocks below. The wind was sharp, carrying the scent of salt and pine. She rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about going back?" she asked quietly. "To them?" She nodded. "No," he said. "Not because I hate them. But because that chapter is done. I finally closed the book." Lauren smiled into his coat. "I'm glad." He looked out over the ocean. "I gave them the best years of my life," he said. "But that doesn't mean the rest of them are gone." On a warm spring morning, Joseph hosted a small backyard cookout at his new place. It wasn't much, just a few friends, some music, and the smell of burgers on the grill. Lauren was in charge of the playlist, and tequila shots. The neighbor's dog kept wandering in for scraps. At one point, Lauren raised her glass and tapped the edge with a fork. "Speech," she yelled. Joseph groaned. "No. Absolutely not. Come on." She grinned. "You've earned it." The group quieted. All eyes on him. Joseph stood slowly, hands in his pockets. "I've never been much for speeches," he began. "But I'll say this, sometimes, the people you think will love you forever will disappoint you. Sometimes they'll break your heart, even if you gave them everything." He paused, eyes scanning the group. "But sometimes, if you're lucky, life gives you a second chance. Not with the same people, but with new people. With new beginnings. With peace. And love. And the chance to start over." He raised his glass. "To the ones who let go." Glasses clanked. Laughter rippled. And Joseph, for the first time in decades, felt like he wasn't just surviving. He was living. Final thoughts. Joseph's story isn't one of revenge or bitterness. It's a story of growth. Of letting go. Of learning that sometimes, being the better person doesn't mean staying, it means walking away with your dignity, even if it hurts. It's about rediscovering your worth in a world that tried to convince you were only valuable when useful. And in the end, it's about choosing peace over performance. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes, it's the people who show up when you've lost everything, and choose to stay, not because they have to, but because they see your heart. Joseph was once erased. Now, he writes his own story. One line at a time.